All right, Coach Collin Castelli here with Shot Mechanics and HoopDiaries.com. Today on the line, we got Thomas Wilkins, an awesome coach located in the Arizona area. So I'm going to let him introduce himself a little bit. So Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Collin. Appreciate you guys having me on. I'm excited.
Awesome. We're happy to have you here. So I suppose we're just going to kind of jump right into it. Thomas is an expert in the basketball training industry. He's got a couple of awesome books out there. So we're going to kind of touch through some of the things he likes to see in training, some of the stuff that he really likes to emphasize in the basketball world. So youngsters, listen up on this one. All right. So Thomas, why don't you start out by telling us a little bit about your basketball journey, kind of like where you fell in love with it, where you went to high school, kind of that journey to college, all that sort of good stuff.
Yeah, well, for me, it started at a very young age. My dad used to say that when I was young, it was like the second thing in my crib. It was a bottle and a basketball. Like, that was what I loved. And I was fortunate enough to be born in Boston, Massachusetts. And my dad it's crazy how it all worked, but my dad ended up being close friends with ML Carr, who was at the time playing for the Celtics, and then he became the general manager of the Celtics, then he became the coach of the Celtics. So I got an opportunity to watch people come through the Boston Garden, which was amazing. And through all of that, it was like, oh man, I really love basketball. Like, and it's almost like being in Boston, you're forced to love basketball, especially in that time frame. Right as, Bird was kind of leaving and the dynasties were over, the basketball phenomenon was crazy.
Yeah, I bet.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I was just gonna say, so coming out of that, so you kind of start getting into the Boston basketball scene, all sorts of stuff, and then what continued after that for you?
So after that, I left. I moved to North Carolina in like '96 or so, and I moved to Cary, North Carolina, which is wedged in between like that area of college basketball where it's just so popular, right? Tobacco Road,
for sure.
So I was fortunate enough to play high school basketball at a school called Green Hope High School. And at my high school, in our conference over there, it was crazy in the capital area or in Wake County, because in my conference, we had an All-American every year in my conference that we played. So it was like every night we were playing D1 guys. And, it was amazing to be in that area of baskesketball at that time during high school.
Absolutely.
So we used to get beat up on a lot, too, because we were a new high school. So it was like we had there's a guy, PJ Tucker, right now who plays for the Suns here. And he came to my high school when we were both sophomores. And he only spent 1 week at the school because he was like, I'm the biggest kid at school. I got to leave. I got to go.
He says, I've had enough.
Yeah. So it was really fun there. And, had an opportunity to play against great talent. And really, I was fortunate enough to get one of my assistant coaches was a walk-on to Carolina, which led me to talking to the coach at the time, who was Doug Wojcik of their JV program.
Cool.
And I got accepted at Carolina and went on to Carolina to play for their JV program for a couple years, and then played for their varsity program in 2006, where I got to travel and do all that stuff.
Cool.
And through all that, I worked camps everywhere, worked N1 basketball camp the high school basketball championships for N1, worked at Stanford basketball camp, of course, Carolina's camp, worked all kind of camps and fell in love with coaching.
Absolutely. And it's kind of that natural, for guys that love to play, it's kind of that natural progression just to move straight from, just being in the gym as a player to being in the gym as a coach,
Exactly. And I was fortunate enough, my head coach, his name was Mickey Bissett, he really put a lot of pressure on me when I was a player to think like a coach, because I was a point guard.
Perfect.
So it was a natural progression into the coaching thing, and I sat on his bench for a couple of years, and then I had an AAU team who we ended up being top 6 in the state for both the years I coached them, and we played in some pretty big tournaments, the AAU Super Showcase down in Orlando. We played in Washington, D.C. in a couple tournaments, and, we sent 3 guys D1. So it was pretty, 4 in my second year, I picked up a guy who was playing at my high school who ended up going to UNC Wilmington. But I had a lot of guys that we ended up playing with that ended up doing well. And it's just cool to see that now. Like, I see those guys now. One of my players is over in Germany, and we were talking on Facebook the other day. It's just funny to see that stuff happen now. Like, man, I'm the old. He called me old man.
I know.
Like, I'm not old.
I went back where I went to high school. They do like open gyms over Christmas and stuff, and I went back this last year, and like, I'm the oldest guy in the gym now, and it freaks me out. I'm like, I'm the oldest guy here. This is nuts.
Exactly. That's the crazy thing. But it's cool. I've been very fortunate. I've done everything you can imagine in basketball, from playing to coaching to refereeing. Even that was like my part-time job.
Yeah, yeah.
So I love it, and I think it's been. I just want that. I hope other people's basketball journey can be as enjoyable as mine. That's all I hope.
For sure. That's kind of what we're all about at Shot Mechanics and Hoop Diaries too. That's kind of why we're doing this whole thing. So that's awesome. So as you kind of look back on your basketball career, is there anything that you would have either changed or done differently? So there's a lot of like kind of young people on our YouTube channel and listen to the podcast and stuff. And so we like to try to, focus on stuff that maybe, guys who have been through it would maybe want to change or do differently or focus on something different. So I always say, me personally, I kind of pigeonholed myself into as a shooter when I was younger. And so like I kind of was just a shooter. That's all I could do, break zones. And then all of a sudden, we had a 6'10" post who went and played at Gonzaga named Josh Heitvelt, who would have been pretty close around the time you were at UNC. And he left, and now you don't have a 6'10" post who can dunk on everybody, and nobody needs a shooter to bust zones. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like what we're looking for, something that maybe you would have done differently as far as like training or the whole process.
Man, wow. One thing is tough.
You feel free to throw out multiple ones if you want to.
Yeah, I think the first thing I would have done is about the time when I was in high school. That was when like N1. You remember N1 basketball? Oh, yeah. That was like the craze.
For sure.
I think I spent too much time trying to prove I could roll around on the ground with the ball and
the flashy stuff. You want to be flashy.
Yeah,
I did the same thing, but I was a shooter, so it didn't even matter.
I see. I think that was probably a mistake that I made, trying to be too flashy. I can still remember from my high school team, we used to run this high pick and roll play. And when I was a sophomore, my big was not very good. So I still remember coming off the ball screen, throwing a no-look pass, and it hit him in the face. But it hit him so hard that it came back to me. So I got it and laid it up, and I was like, that's why I should stop doing that kind of stuff.
You're dropping dimes to yourself, though.
He wasn't happy, though.
I could see that. That's funny, though, and that's a great point, because that's something that a lot of the kids that I work with, like it's kind of, they try to do a little bit too flash, not enough substance, and there's kind of like a nice medium of the two that you can kind of mesh together where, sustainable flash sort of stuff. I'm really glad you brought that up. So kind of moving in from there, then what's a piece of advice you could give a young hooper that was listening to this, whether it be like, training tips or resources to help them out or something like that?
Man, in my book, it's called How to Play Basketball, a guide to getting better by playing pickup games. And I think one of the things that I talk about in that book is you got to find the best players in your area. So, sharks swim with sharks.
For sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So, if you're playing with people who are minnows, you're never going to get better. So you have to find ways to challenge yourself. And I think that for me, I really got better when I played with people who were better than me. So when I was really young, I played with the men. So whenever the men played and I was, 12, 13, I was playing with them. And then, once I got at 15, I was better than the men that played at my YMCA. So then it was like, all right, I need to go outside my area and find better talent. And then I found the guys that were coming home from college or whatever. And that was the thing. And that made me, I got so much better by playing with them. I can still remember playing against Julius Hodge from New York, who played at NC State in our summer league. And this dude was an amazing defender. But when we played, I don't know why he was guarding me, but he was guarding me at some point. And I drove past him, and then he reached behind me and knocked the ball away. And I was like, man, I thought I got him. And he pulled me to the side, and he was like, hey, anytime you blow past the defender, just make sure you put the ball in the other hand or out in front. And it was like, from that moment on, anytime I blew past somebody, the ball was in front of me, and nobody could get it.
Push it out. Yeah, absolutely. That's cool. And that's, I see that all the time with kids. If they're the best player at the playground, you got to find a better playground. If you're the best player at the Y, you got to find a better Y. And me personally, that's where I made my biggest jump skill-wise. I went to a small community college and then ended up going to Washington State University. And then I got a lot better just from playing with the football players, guys that were Division I athletes that were really, really great, high school basketball players but played football instead. And that's where I got a lot better, was because I was playing against guys that were faster, bigger, stronger, and that's what really like kind of forces you to tone your skills even more. And so that's an awesome book that you put out. Especially, I love the idea of how to get better through pickup, because that's something where a lot of coaches and a lot of skill guys out there are kind of like, they kind of down on pickup and they kind of down on one-on-one a little bit when it comes to using it as kind of a training tool. But really, I mean, that's how a lot of people just get better. And so that's cool that you got a book out. And that's an Amazon bestseller, correct?
Yeah. So it's top 100 in basketball coaching right now on Amazon. So it's done pretty well. I put it out a couple years ago, cool. And it continues to sell. And I think that the other thing that is huge in the book, I also talk about the fact that, because you're right, a lot of coaches say, hey, pickup games, you're not getting better. And I think it's just because people aren't focused on something during the pickup game.
For sure.
So if you go to a pickup game and you're just trying to win, winning is great, right? But at the end of the day, that W doesn't go on your record book, right? So you have to go out there and work on something, whether that's, for me, I'm left-handed, so I always worked on going right when I played pickup games.
Absolutely.
And that's just the kind of stuff people got to do when they play pickup games, is not only play, but work on something.
And that's absolutely right. I mean, if you go out and run a pickup game where you're just kind of jogging up and down the floor, half-assing it just a little bit, it's not going to be nearly as fulfilling is if you're trying to get better at something. So like you just said, you work on your right hand. I used to try to work on driving because I was just a stand-up shooter sort of guy. So I work on trying to go by guys and finish in the paint and stuff. So yeah, absolutely. That's awesome, man. So kind of moving on from that. So you've had some nice success. You've done, the books that are awesome. You made it to the collegiate level, and you're doing some great coaching. So what is one attribute, or maybe a couple attributes, that you think kind of contribute to your success in the basketball industry?
Enthusiasm.
Awesome.
That's it, right? You gotta. So the Duke-Syracuse game that just happened, Jim Boeheim gets thrown out of the game, and he's got his jacket almost off, right? You see all the pictures, right? He's so excited, so animated. Dick Vitale is another example of somebody who's like, he's probably on the extreme end. My Carolina fans would be upset that I mentioned him, but he's so enthusiastic that people they watch because he's so excited. For sure. And I think the most successful people are always excited. So enthusiasm is going to be a key to any success in anything, but especially in sports. For sure.
I couldn't agree with you 100%. I couldn't agree with you anymore. That's perfect. It almost seems like in the basketball realm, especially, success, enthusiasm isn't optional at all. I mean, those are who successful have it. There's not very many great players or great coaches that are kind of ho-hum about the whole thing.
Exactly.
Very cool. Very cool. I like that. So moving into like actual training, and you're working with players, what's kind of one specific tip that you find yourself telling players all the time?
Well, I think a lot of players are getting a lot of skill coaching from coaches, and they're getting a lot of advice about certain things from coaches. But I think one thing that's missing, and this is something that I found myself working with different camps. So whenever I worked at different camps, they usually have me specialize in helping the basketball players work on their explosion.
Oh, nice.
So I think a lot of times when coaches say, hey, go to the weight room. What do the players do? They go to the weight room, they get some weights off the rack, they do whatever it is.
Do some curls.
Yeah, I'm going to do some curls.
Work on those buys.
Right? But they don't work on their explosiveness. So that's the thing that I think for anybody right now that's working on training or working to get better at basketball, you want to work on becoming more explosive. So there are different things you can do. Seated box jumps is one, right? And you don't even have a box. You can sit down and jump up, right? So sure. I think that if you're working on, if you want to be a better chef, you have to cook. So if you want to jump higher, you need to jump more. You need to become a better jumper, and that will help you reach higher heights. So I think that that's really the thing that I would say. Find drills that work on explosion if you're trying to become a better basketball player, not just... Now, if you want to have a great physique and look like a bodybuilder, by all means, stay in the weight room and only do kind of the more static things. But
Cool. That's a hot tip. That's a great piece of advice. So all you guys out there listening, take that to heart for sure. All right, so let's talk out workout jams. I like to listen to some music when I work out and stuff. What sort of tunes you playing nowadays?
Man, so I love music, but my wife is always telling me that what I listen to is very narrow. But I love hip hop. I love rap. So like one of my favorite artists is Jay-Z. So a lot of times I'll find myself listening to some Jay-Z. I also like other artists too, like Drake and Rick Ross. I could probably have Rick Ross on random on my iPod and never and work out forever.
Just all day long.
Yeah.
And it's funny.
It's
funny you mentioned Jay-Z because I was working out to Jay-Z when I was in junior high, and then now I'll go to the gym and I'm still working out to Jay-Z, and it's like his new stuff. It just never ends. It's like a never-ending workout playlist.
It's crazy, right? That he continues to make relevant and quality music. So
for sure. So if you guys aren't out there working out to Jay-Z or Rick Ross, you definitely should get on it because it keeps you hyped.
For sure.
All right. So let's kind of talk about your basketball future here. So what's one thing kind of about your basketball future that's exciting you? Where you're going? What you got happening?
Man, so I've been so fortunate just to have the people in my life that have encouraged me and people that know a lot about basketball. And I know I don't know everything, but I know that if I keep talking to everybody that knows more than I do, I'll at least know more than I knew yesterday.
For sure.
But I think for me, it's really just about the opportunity to help others achieve their goals.
Awesome.
Basketball is the most popular sport on earth right now, right? You know how many people graduated from Harvard? Ever, total.
How many? I have no idea.
323,000. Okay? There's 450 million people playing basketball today, right? That's 6% of the human population.
Yeah.
People are learning through sport. And I think that what gets me excited and what has me so excited about the next book I'm writing, How to Coach Basketball, is that if we can take this opportunity to help people develop the skills and habits that they're going to use the rest of their life through sport, we have an opportunity to change literally the world. So that's what I'm so excited to help people to think about basketball in a different way, to look for the proven techniques that can help them enhance their skill set. But then also thinking about teamwork, work ethic, things that you use when you move on past basketball or move into coaching. Those are the things that are really, really important. So I'm just excited to be on the forefront of that conversation.
Man, that's 100% gold right there. That's exactly why we're doing it. That's why we're in it, and that's awesome, man. That's great. So what sort of other stuff you got coming as far as products or whatever? So you got the How to Learn Basketball Through Pickup Games. You got something else coming out?
So by August, I'm working with. So one of the things that I'm so excited about is I have this guy who is. One day he's going to make a great movie, okay? But I happen to find him before he's made his great movie, okay?
Perfect.
So he's helping me develop a lot of different videos and just helping me create the next thing that'll be basketball drills. Cool. Which will be an interactive. What I didn't want to do is just put all my stuff on YouTube, which I have a lot of stuff on YouTube, but I wanted to create something that could really help people either on an app or wherever they are. So that's the next phase. Before the end of the year, there'll be a basketball drills app, and it will include a lot of different workouts, and not just specific drills, but workouts that you can do and how you can track your workouts and see are you progressing. And that's going to be before the end of the year, that's the big thing that I'm excited about in addition to the book this summer. So that's the future.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, once you get that out or you're getting ready to get it out, you definitely got to come back on and we'll talk some more hoops and remind everybody that it's coming out for sure.
Perfect.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about a story time. So I loved, one of my favorite parts about growing up playing basketball was the locker room atmosphere, hanging out with your buddies, bus trips, that sort of stuff. And so I always like to ask the guests on the show if they have some sort of kind of funny or interesting kind of story time that happened somewhere along their basketball line.
What's funny is mine happened right at the end of my career at Carolina, and it was just weird. My senior year, I was so excited to be on the basketball team that it led me to not doing so much homework. Okay?
Yeah, I feel you.
And Coach Williams, one day when we were leaving the Dean Dome, he pulled me aside and he was like, "Hey, I know you let your schoolwork slip. I need you to make sure that you bring your grades up and that you finish your degree program." He's like, "And if you don't, I'm going to turn you into a spot on this pavement." And he points down to the pavement, right? So I'm like, oh, man, this is crazy, right? So I end up finishing my degree program. It took me a little longer than I would like it to take, but whatever. I finish it. And we had a 100-year celebration. So we had like 100 years of Carolina basketball. We have all these people coming back to Carolina, and I went there, and it was an awesome experience. But when I was there, we're talking about years later, 4 or 5 years later, Coach Williams pulls me aside and he said, "Hey, you finished your degree program. That's good. Now I don't have to make you a spot on that pavement," right? And I just thought that it was just one of those examples where, man, that guy, there were a lot more important people there than me, okay? There were a lot more important people there than me. And just that's I think the impact that coaches have on players' lives, right? That he took the time in a time when he really didn't have to say a word to me, right? He pulled me aside for a couple minutes to remind me of the things that are important. And it just cracks me up because he's so funny to me, just the way that he is. And it was just, he still remembered saying that. And I think that was just always cracks me up when I think about that spot on the pavement.
That's funny. That's funny. And you are not a spot on the pavement. You are moving and shaking in the basketball world, my man.
That's the truth. That is the truth. So it's great.
All right, very cool. Well, hey, thanks for coming on and talking to us. Before we leave here, why don't you throw out kind of where people can connect with you, where they can find your content, all that stuff.
Yeah, so you can connect with me on my website. It's hoopseducation.com, all one word, just hoopseducation.com. You can also catch me on Twitter. My handle's @hoopseducation. We're on Facebook too, so facebook.com/hoopseducation, all one word. So you can catch me at any one of those 3 places. Twitter is probably the place where I'm the most, my Twitter and my website are the place where I'm most active, but cool. Twitter is the place where people can really connect with me and we can have some dialogue.
All right. So everybody get out there, connect with him a little bit, check out his stuff. Again, thanks, Thomas, for coming on the podcast here, and it was very much appreciated.
Yes, thank you.
All right.